Steel Curtain Network.
¡Por Jorgito! Goes down! Najee Harris! DJ Watt!
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, do not check your calendar. No, you're not wrong. It's Tuesday. It is not Thursday. This is Steelers preview, but we told you last week, in case you missed it, that there's going to be a switch in the schedule. Dave and Big Brosco are down in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And so here we are, the two, myself, Brian Davis, doing the preview on Tuesday. Brian, what's going on?
Did you get invited with the Sco family? Because I did not, Jeff.
No, I didn't. And that's okay. You know, we live to fight another day.
I don't want to see either Scobro in a Speedo. So I'm happy being here with you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's great to see, Jeff, you said something to me.
Yeah.
As I break down the fourth wall.
There it is.
You said something to me earlier. It's like, will anybody be on? Because we're doing this at 4:00. I'm like, you build it, they will come, my friend. Yeah. And here come our friends. So I'm so happy to spend this day with you. We're going to have some special stuff for the 4th of July, since the preview will not be on the 4th of July, but we'll have something special for you there. But it's always great to talk Steelers. I miss my boy, though. I miss Davey.
He'll be back next week, and we'll have the triumphant trio all together. We are going to have a little Q&A in the second half of the show, so make sure you stick around. And if you have questions, you can ask, and we'll answer those right here on the program. But we want to start this show a little bit different. There's no news to talk about. No news is good news this time of year. And we were talking via message back and forth today about the topic we wanted to discuss. And the one thing we came up with was there are some Steelers that have a tremendous amount of value this year, but they're not getting a lot of publicity. They're not getting a lot of notoriety from the general public, from the national media to the local media. And I think that they actually do deserve some time and discussion because, again, they bring value. So, Brian, you provided this list, and we're going to go through these players. And you all that are watching or listening, you might have some people that we didn't mention that you think should be on the list. Again, there's a lot of value with these players, but they're not getting a lot of attention. So I think a good place to start is on the offensive line, and it's their most expensive offensive lineman, and that is right guard James Daniels. Brian, the value is there. I mean, my gosh, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This guy is vital to this team this year, Jeff, and he has been vital. He has been their best offensive lineman. Now, you can go ahead and make an argument for Isaac Seumalo, but when you go ahead and talk about the veterans on the line, Big Isaac, gets the notoriety right now. Yeah. I think he's next in line to be a Pro Bowler. I think he is the guy. But James is still very young. There's a good chance that this could be his last season in Pittsburgh just because of the contract situation. This is going to be his 3rd year in Pittsburgh, and it runs out. And not because of the fact that he's not wanted in Pittsburgh. It's like he might be playing himself out of Pittsburgh because he's been playing very well and he's very valuable. I could see him getting the bag, as they say. But the big importance to a guy like James Daniels, who we're not talking about way too much, I'm sure we mentioned him here and there, but with big number 78, it's the fact that he has youth on both sides of him, possibly. If Zach Frazier ends up starting at center, and we're talking a lot about Zach Frazier, if you're going to have a young guy at right tackle, whoever it may be. And if you don't have a young guy in Troy Fautanu or Broderick Jones, and it somehow is Dan Moore Jr., then you have a guy that James Daniels still needs to, I don't want to say carry, I just want to say he needs to be the rock for those guys. So he's kind of the anchor of young guys on both sides of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, you could say the same thing about Isaac Seumalo on the left side of the line in terms of Broderick Jones. If he's the left tackle, is still really young. I think that a lot of people talked about James Daniels this offseason. We're talking about Dave's. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Dave's comment in the live chat about I'm going with the Florida Retirement Village early bird showtime. Yes, let me get back. I'm not.
I mean, you know what? I suggested the 4 o'clock, so I'm.
Yes,
worried.
He did. Yes, he did. everyone was talking about how James Daniels openly said that there have been no contract talks. And a lot of people read into this that the Steelers have no interest in bringing him back. And from the moment I heard that, and this is not source information, I just totally disagreed with everything that they were saying. He has every right to say, we haven't talked about the contract, because the Steelers might have told him, let's talk contract after this season. That's fair. And he could absolutely, it's under his power to say, well, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to want to sign anything anyways. I want to wait and see how this year goes. I want to test free agency. He has that right as a player. So I don't think that what James Daniels said, I think it was phase 3 of OTAs, I don't think of what he said was in any way, shape, or form meaning that this is his last year as a Steeler. I think that they could absolutely bring him back. I think that they do realize the value he provides. And I don't think a 4th round pick and Mason McCormick is necessarily the writing on the wall that he is just going to be jettisoned away or allowed to walk. I think that they want him back. I just don't know if it's going to make him actually make it happen, so to speak, because there's a lot of differences there in terms of contract negotiations. But Brian, what do you think about the Steelers potentially keeping James Daniels after this year?
I think it would be fantastic. I'm not betting on him. I'm not betting against it, but I am going to bet that he is going to turn a lot of heads this year and be very valuable to some franchise next year. That's I feel very positive on that. And I agree what you said about Isaac Seumalo too, having the same situation on his side, but he's protected by a 3-year contract as well, and he's on year number 2.
Yep. All right, so let's shift gears and go to the next player, tight end Connor Hayward. Now, Connor Hayward, we talked about him a few weeks ago and how on the Steelers official website, he was listed as a fullback / tight end. Come to find out, he's been listed as that for several years now since he was drafted. But he's a player that it depends on who you talk to, how they view Connor Hayward. Some people view Connor Hayward as this guy might not even make the team, because all these tight ends that they brought in, if they outshine him and they prove to be more valuable on special teams, they don't really need a fullback anyways. I think there is value in what he can bring in terms of his athleticism. But Brian, what do you think about Connor Hayward?
I think he is very valuable. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and say that is he's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife utility man. I feel like if this was baseball, he would be your utility infielder. Or you could trust him at first base. You could put him in left field. You could even have him in third base. Oh, by the way, we missed Bobby Bonilla Day yesterday, so that made me think about him. But you could see him anywhere on the field. But Connor Hayward, to me, he's a grinder. He's just a guy that works. Wherever you put him, he seems to me like the guy. Wherever you put me, coach, just let me play ball. I just want a helmet. Yeah. Just want to play. But he comes up valuable a lot of times. How many times do we say, oh, Connor screwed that up? Very few. But there's some valuable times late in games when 83 is the one that comes up with the ball, and it's not Heath Miller from years back. You're not watching highlights. You're watching Connor Hayward, and he gets it. He also has a big brother on the team that has helped him get it. When I say helped him get it, he lived with 10 years with his brother on this team, and he knows the culture. So this is a guy that didn't have to learn the culture. So going into I believe it's his 3rd year or his 4th year? Third year. I mean, there's a lot to be said that, he could not have a job, but I think he's going to work his way into some kind of job and just be vital to this team.
To me, I look at this situation and you look at Connor Hayward's athleticism, and everyone loves to talk about it, myself included. And Connor Hayward, he was a running back at Michigan State at times. He actually returned kicks at times. He did a lot when he was in college. I think that what he needs to do, though, and I'm not sure if the Steelers are promoting him to do this, pumping him and pushing him in this way, they need to say, listen, Connor, you need to be a really good route runner. You really need to improve your route running, because if we want to use you as a mismatch, whether it's against a linebacker, whether it's against a safety, you have to be able to win in those moments. And Connor Hayward, he's had some big plays, and you could talk about his rookie year in Atlanta, coming up with a big catch down the seam. He's had some moments, but if the Steelers really want to utilize him and he wants to see playing time over some of these other tight ends that are on the roster that have clearly defined roles, he's got to improve in a lot of ways. And that's why I'm not always 100% sold that he's actually going to make the team. I'm not sold that they have, well, that's a guaranteed lock. Pat Fryermuth's a lock. Darnell Washington's a lock. And after that, may the best man win. I think Connor Hayward can provide value if A, he's improved in those areas that I mentioned, and B, the offensive coordinator is willing to utilize him in a fashion with those mismatches to make him win some of those. So we'll see. We will see that how that pans out with Connor Hayward. Any final thoughts there before we move on?
Yeah, I just love Connor Hayward. I just think he epitomizes Steeler football.
Yeah, it's family affair in Pittsburgh. All right, let's go to the next one. And this is something that a lot of people, boy, they hate this signing. When they signed Kyle Allen to be their third string quarterback, you would have thought that this team brought back Bubby Brister or something at whatever age he is, probably in his late 60s or early 60s. I don't know how old Bubby is. Anyways, you would have thought that that's what they did. Or even worse, they decided, let's bring back Neil O'Donnell. It's Kyle Allen. He's quarterback 3. I was the one, I think, that wrote the article for SteelCurtainNetwork.com. Make sure you go check that website out at some point. Kyle Allen is a guy that I was shocked by how much starting experience he has. He had starting experience filling in for Cam Newton in Carolina. He had starting experience in Washington with the Commanders. I believe that was Alex Smith's time there that he actually helped spell him at times. The guy has experience. What else do you want in a quarterback 3? I think there's a lot of value there. If you get to that point, yeah, you're going to need some help anyways. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, you don't need, I think we proved it last year when we saw the Pittsburgh Steelers, change the way they do things at third string quarterback. And lo and behold, your third string quarterback is getting to the playoffs at the end of the year in Mason Rudolph. So it's with the new rules. Thank you, San Francisco 49ers, for getting everybody murdered in that NFC championship game and ending up with Josh Johnson and almost Christian McCaffrey throwing the football because they finally decided, this rule's stupid. And it really is. So having that emergency quarterback on there that, and I like the fact that if he comes in, he can't come out. I like that. But the third guy needs to be a guy that you could count on because we see guys get hurt easily. And the first guy to get hurt, that's fine. You've got the next guy. But the second guy getting hurt, then you're stuck with a third stringer that is Brian St. Pierre. It's a guy that how many third string quarterbacks, if you look around the league, do you've ever heard of this guy?
Trying to think. I can't think of any.
Yeah. It's Jeff. It's very hard. And even for diehards, it's very hard to go ahead and name some backup quarterbacks. But I mean, third string quarterbacks. But to have a guy like Kyle Allen, it's not a big name. Nobody, lifted an eyelid when they heard that Kyle Allen was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But now we found out how valuable a guy like that who has, starting experience could be. So I'm excited for Kyle Allen being in here.
A name that doesn't get talked about a lot in terms of Steelers history, nor should it, is something Jared Devil put in the live chat. I'll bring it up. He said St. Pierre, the real number 2. Now, I don't know if he was referring to Brian St. Pierre. That's how I took it. I'm assuming. I don't know many St. Pierres, but Brian St. Pierre, when he was the third string quarterback and the Steelers drafted him, I believe, out of Boston College, he was actually in a depth chart that he wasn't going to see the field. Fans love the draft pick, though. They're like, this guy's got experience. He's capable if they ever have to get to the third. Was never a threat to be the starter. Was not that situation. It wasn't even a Mason Rudolph situation because Mason Rudolph at one point, some people thought he could actually win the job. Okay. I think Kyle Allen fits in with that Brian St. Pierre mold. No one's expecting him to get reps in training camp with the first string or the second string. He's going to just stay out there with the third string and anyone else. And he's going to have experience and he's going to be able to help. The only player I wanted more was I would love to have Joshua Dobbs back as the third string guy. He's that brainiac on the sideline that even Ben Roethlisberger trusted, but nonetheless, he went elsewhere. So we'll see. But Kyle Allen does have some value. Let's go to the next player. And that is, let's go here. I'm trying to switch. Let's shift gears to another free agent. Actually, I believe he was signed almost the same day, if not the same day, the day after Kyle Allen. That's Dean Lowry. Dean Lowry played last year with the Minnesota Vikings, didn't play much. He was basically I think he was injured in the first quarter of the season, tore his pec muscle, had to have surgery. He was done, gets released. Steelers sign him. The guy has a lot of experience as well. I think the best years of his career were probably with Green Bay, but Dean Lowry is someone that no one is talking about in terms of being a piece on that defensive line. What do you think about Dean Lowry, Brian?
Well, we have our Minnesota Vikings affiliate for the Fans First Sports Network, David Stefano, in the audience that said "Skull Gentleman" a little earlier on.
Yeah.
And I talked to David when the Pittsburgh Steelers brought in Dean Lowry. And I remembered him more for being a Green Bay Packer, but he said, this is a solid player that got hurt. This is the kind of guy on a defensive line that is a guy that you rotate in and you don't feel like you lose way too much. If you have a guy like Larry Ogunjobi or, somebody go down, you could plug a guy like this in and not feel like you're left out on an island. Don't feel like you have a major weakness. So I love the Dean Lowry signing for that reason.
I think it was Pittsburgh Standard Time, our new podcast on our audio-only feed that is Thursday mornings with Dave Schofield and Greg Benevent. I definitely check it out. Everyone that listens to our podcast, go wherever you get your podcasts and find us, the Steel Curtain Network, on Thursday mornings. You'll hear Dave and Greg. And I think it was Dave that brought up Armon Watts. Armon Watts actually had a pretty good year last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If Dean Lowry could be an Armon Watts this year, it's a great signing. It's a phenomenal signing. Because if he can be that, then you don't have to rely on DeMarvin Leal, Mr. Inactive, as we call him. We don't have to rely on him to somehow step up his game and figure out what he's supposed to do. You don't have to hope for the light bulb to go on for Isaiah Loudermilk. You actually can have a veteran presence, a guy who's versatile. I think Dean Lowry fits. Can he stay healthy? Those are always the big questions. Every player on every team. So it's not like that's breaking news. But I think Dean Lowry, do you think, Brian, he can do the Armon Watts in 2024?
I absolutely can. And I was bummed when Armon Watts, I believe it went to the Patriots.
I think you're right.
And when he left, and that's a guy last year when he came over from the Bears, I'm like, Armon who? I didn't know who he was, but you find out who these guys are really quick. And there's something that I hate, and this about me. I hate when anybody calls any professional athlete a scrub or a bum or anything like that, because there's so much value at the bottom of that roster. You need those guys to fill in those pieces of the puzzle, to come on in and fill out a lineup card, fill up a lineup and come in and help. And how many times have we had guys like that as fans in Pittsburgh that we discounted, but then all of a sudden you're like, wow, where have you been all my life?
That's true. I want to bring up one more player before we take a break, and then we'll ask some questions here. And we had more players, but let's just talk about this one guy because I think it's valuable. He brings a lot of value, but I don't know if he lives up to the hype sometimes. That's Larry Ogunjobi. Larry Ogunjobi signed 2 years ago to a 1-year contract. I thought he played well, and he played that year where he was hurt almost every week. Didn't practice, played well. Last season, it seemed like he had better health, and he didn't play as well, which is really strange. Brian, what are your expectations for Larry Ogunjobi on the defensive line this year?
All right, so he just turned 30 years old on June 3rd. So less than a month ago, he turned 30. I think the biggest problem with him is he's been beat up on that defensive line, like you said, over the last couple years. Whether he's healthy or not, the man has drive, the man has heart and has determination. I like having him in here. He is one of those players that you don't expect him to be a superstar. You're not going to put him in the Pro Bowl conversation. You're really not. But what you are going to do is feel comfortable that he is going to hold down that side of the line. Now, did he shine like a superstar? Absolutely not. But if I recall last season, I don't really remember us complaining that much about Larry Ogunjobi's play, but maybe the fact that we just hadn't heard his name as much. But I don't think we ever saw him as a weakness as a Pittsburgh Steelers. As a Pittsburgh Steeler player, but we just saw him as a guy that we would like to hear more from. So I think he can have one of those years at the age of 30.
I think Larry Ogunjobi, for me, you mentioned like, well, the Pro Bowls and stuff like that. He's capable of being that guy, though.
Yeah.
He is absolutely capable. So do we expect that? No. Could he be that? Yes. And so when you talk about my least favorite word when talking about the football team or anything that requires some type of performance, it's potential, because you don't necessarily live up to that potential. Sometimes you fall well short of that potential. He's a guy that is brimming with potential, but he's just got to go out and execute. He's got to go do it. And I don't know, there's a part of me that's kind of, a little concerned. I mean, my gosh, you have Cam Hayward right there, a great situation. Carl Dunbar is a phenomenal football coach coaching the D-line, and he didn't get it done last year, but I'm going to hold off judgment and give him a one more year. But I was disappointed with Larry Ogunjobi last year because, like the title of the podcast says, we do have a lot of value in that, but at the same time, he has to go out and execute. He's got to play better. So we'll see how that goes. Any final thoughts there, Brian?
I have trouble arguing with you on that, and I get it. I really think that I just don't see him as a liability, and I think that's the best thing when you're looking at this whole Larry Ogunjobi situation. He's not going to kill you. So the old Mike Tomlin, well, he didn't kill us. He's not going to kill you, but you want more.
Yeah. And as a defender, you want them to kill someone else.
Yes.
So if he's not going to kill you, kill them. That's what you got to do. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back after this break, we're going to answer a few fan questions. We're going to do a short trivia before we call it a show. We'll be right back. All right. We are back. And I thank everyone that's tuning in early for this special Steelers Preview Tuesday podcast. Remember, on Thursday, we'll have an abbreviated show that'll be a little bit different on the 4th of July. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. But we do have some fan questions that are coming in now. And here we go. Let's start with Pittsburgh Toddy. It's a good question. Will people still hate Tomlin even if he brings home another Lombardi? Brian, what do you think?
People hated Tomlin when he brought home the first Lombardi. There are just some people that are going to hate. It's going to be, I call them the yeah buts. Yeah, he brought home another Lombardi, but yeah, he brought home a first Lombardi, but they were Bill Cowher's players. That's not me saying it, but that's what people are saying. Yeah, he brought home another Lombardi this year, but Tomlin still, can't get enough out of that offense. Yeah, but think about all those years he wasted with Ben Roethlisberger. All the yeah buts out there. You know what? If he brings home another Lombardi, it is going to be epic, and fans are going to love it, but they're going to turn around a couple months later and some yeah buts will come out. But that's absolutely what happens with Mike Tomlin. Jeff and I live in Ravens country, and we would argue that it is Steeler country, even though it's the state of Maryland. Yeah. But they seem to hate John Harbaugh even more here. It would shock you how much they can't stand this guy, and he's done so much for that franchise. I know I've got a nickname for him, but seriously, that's what happens with him. That's what happens with a lot of coaches. I mean, my gosh, 2 years ago, Nick Sirianni was a football god. Last year in Philadelphia, he was. They were ready to hang him in effigy. It was absolutely crazy. One last thing to say about Mike Tomlin. My wife and son went to buy a car, and they were talking to the guy who's like a football coach, helps youth out, is a mentor, and found out that I was a Steelers fan. And he's like, I absolutely love Mike Tomlin. What does your husband think about Mike Tomlin? And my wife's like, he adores him. And Jeff, Dave, we get flack all the time for bringing up the pros to the cons that everybody brings up with Mike Tomlin. But facts are facts, as Big G will say, facts.
I think that the people that would be upset with a Super Bowl ring are the same people that would be upset by how the Steelers won it. So, for instance, if someone's gonna, if and the question that's still on the screen is, would they be upset if he won another Super Bowl? And there would be people that would say, well, yeah, the Steelers won. I just wish they could have run the ball better, or never should have been that close. Like, there are people that are like that, and those are the people that would still have fault with Mike Tomlin in some way, shape, or form. But ultimately, there's always going to be detractors with everything.
They had it with Cowher too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cowher wasn't Coach Noll.
People wanted Cowher fired after they wanted him fired after the 2003 season. They wanted him fired after 2001, the AFC Championship game that didn't turn out the way everyone wanted against New England. People that have rose-colored glasses on with Bill Cowher, he had detractors as well. Let's go to the next question. Big G, Sean Gurley. Do you feel Logan Lee and Ryan Watts make the 53-man roster? Great question. I'm going to go first here before I throw it to Brian. I think that Logan Lee does not. I think he's a practice squad candidate. Ryan Watts, barring them signing like a Justin Simmons or someone like that, I think he does make the team, especially you think about Cam Sutton possibly being suspended, maybe needing another defensive back during that time. We'll see. Brian, what do you think?
I think you're right on. I don't think that it's a wasted pick in Logan Lee. I just think there's a lot of names on that defensive line, especially with the guy we just talked about in the first half of the show, Dean Lowry. There's still a Montravius Adams on this team. Isaiah Loudermilk, we don't know how much longer he's going to be here, but he's still there. So, and those are primarily your backups, DeMarvin Leal as well. So Logan Lee's going to have more of an opportunity, I think, in year number 2 if he sticks and stays on the practice squad.
All right, let's go to the next question here from Victory Asher. He said, do you think George Pickens will show maturity this upcoming season? What do you think, Brian?
I think he's showing it now, Jeff, just in mini camps. I think the way that he has been connecting with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, I think you're seeing something more and more. I also, my gosh, I hate to kick a guy after he's already out the door, but more and more that I see, the more that I think back, I think Deontay Johnson, I think DJ-18 was a bad influence on that wide receiver room as a whole.
And people would always point to Antonio Brown and say, oh, he was such a cancer in the locker room. And at the end, he probably was. But you know what else Antonio Brown did? He had a tireless work ethic. No one outworked Antonio Brown. And that's how he was the best receiver in the game during his time in the NFL. And I think with George Pickens, he has the capabilities, again, the dreaded P word, potential, but he's going to have to live up to it. They expect him to be the wide receiver 1 this year. To tease my Wednesday Let's Ride podcast, the title of that podcast is all about, we were going to find out if George Pickens is really him, as people like to say on social media. He is him. We'll see. We are going to find out soon enough. Brian, what do you think?
You know, I was on a show the other night. I think it was with Jeremy Jerome Betts on the Q&A. I think that's the show that we were talking about this. The one big difference between George Pickens and Antonio Brown, I think they both have an amazing work ethic. But the big difference is I think George Pickens is a much better teammate. And that kind of shows when you had how Antonio Brown was with Artie Burns when he was a rookie. And remember, even as a rookie and a second-year player, this guy was 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting that year in 2016. Artie Burns was. But Antonio Brown, tried to do everything he could to just push him down and embarrass him in training camp. Now, last year in training camp, you had George Pickens, who was a second-year player, and Joey Porter Jr., who was a rookie. And they did everything to elevate each other. They were pushing, they were shoving, but it was all respect. They wanted to beat each other, but there was no disrespect whatsoever. They did not. George Pickens recognized Joey Porter Jr. as the future of that defense that would help him, and he did everything he could to elevate him, even though he was trying to beat him. But it was a great competition. I think that's going to continue in training camp this year. So I think the maturity keeps on coming with him. And that's all, that's all a part about having a little diva wide receiver in you. But when you are shown that you're the guy and you also had a change at quarterback that you were kind of calling for, and you realize that this is now a better situation and the team's better for it and everybody's better for it, not just yourself, I think you're going to get a lot out of George Pickens in the headspace.
All right. I'll answer this one quickly. Gavin asked, how many Commanders fans are there over there in Maryland? There are Commanders fans. I do know when they changed the name, a lot of fans soured and said, screw this. And they didn't like the ownership. And I'm not sure if those fans ever came back. There's a lot of people I know that they're like, I'm a Redskins fan. And then when they changed the name to the Commanders and then the ownership changes and everything, they're like, I'm just done. Some people just are done. So
there's some, it's funny because some will say, nope, I'm a fan of the Redskins, and they will not call them the Commanders. They will not do that. But they'll even call them Washington. They won't call them the Commanders. But I tried to coerce some over this way. Let's see how this season goes. Yeah. They're now Jaden Daniels is there. Well, they've got just like us. We're never going away.
No. And Daniel Red asked the question, and I lost it, so I would pull it up. But he said on Facebook, how long do you think we'll keep Andy Weidel? Now, Andy Weidel obviously is the assistant GM, and he's been getting some attention with some openings around the league. Everyone says that he's definitely putting his fingerprints all over the Steelers roster, building from the trenches and out. Brian, what do you think about that?
That's a toughie because just like anything, if you get an amazing opportunity, you run with it. Now, Andy Weidel might be the guy that gets an amazing opportunity to go to a franchise that he doesn't respect and might say that, nah, I think I'm good here in Pittsburgh. But if you get that opportunity with a franchise that has a good story to history, a great ownership group in place, then you can't fault the man for leaving if he does.
Yeah. He is a Western PA guy.
Yeah,
and
he is.
His current role with the Steelers is almost a lateral role of what he was doing with Philadelphia. So remember, Andy Weidel was open. He had interviews, second round interview for the GM opening in Pittsburgh. And the fact that they obviously come to terms with Omar Khan, they pick him, but they bring Andy Weidel over as well. It tells me he wants to be a part of the Steelers. So unless he is the general manager, I don't see him necessarily leaving. What do you think, Brian?
You know what? Another thing too, it's how you're respected in-house and also how you're respected by the media and even here and by the fans. Even here, when we talk about Omar Khan, we throw in Andy Weidel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody seems to do that because they're giving him credit. And if the organization is taking care of him inside, it's not the title that matters. Right. It's how you are being treated, how you feel valued by where you are. Sometimes the title is not a big thing. I go back. We were having a conversation about Le'Veon Bell the other day and talking about, and this seems like I'm doing another BJ Finney thing where I'm just going way off the reservation, but I'm not. Because we have the problem with a lot of these young players right now is when they're coming up for a contract, you have the agent telling them, you've got to be the highest paid player in the game. You've got to be this. You have to have that title as the best one paid. And then you go out and you get paid and you go to a horrible situation. Look how an agent ruined Le'Veon Bell's career. So the reason I'm bringing that up is with Andy Weidel, he might be in a better situation and be valued more as being the assistant general manager. You might even see them make him co-general manager. And Omar Khan's the kind of guy that said, yeah, give him the title. If they're working that well together. I mean, just like anything here at Steel Curtain Network, Jeff and I, Dave and I, we don't have the same titles, but we all feel valued the same.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Good questions. Thank you all for chiming in. And it's hard to believe. I mean, we're already in July 2nd. It's only 22 days until the Steelers report. Almost 3 weeks. And the Steelers are reporting to training camp. So that's really crazy to think about. we're going to be here before you know it. So a lot of fans are probably thinking, oh, this is the doldrums. There's no news. And no, there is no news. But like I said, no news is good news at this time of year. All right, Brian, you said you had some trivia filling in for Dave. I'll try and not be a moron, and I'll also probably be looking at the live chat for help. So go ahead. What's your question?
So this should be an easy one, and this was a part of your fandom. I think you were probably in middle school. You were just returning your pick sixes like crazy at that point. It's probably where we're talking about right here. So the last time the Steelers had a running back that led the entire league in rushing, because I really feel like Najee Harris has a chance to do a lot of beautiful things in this league. I have a feeling he could be an all-pro running back in this offense. The last time they had the running back that was just doing everything was 1992. Who was that man, and how many yards did he have?
I want to say Barry Foster, but he didn't come until, was it 94? Or was it Barry Foster?
He was drafted in 1990 out of Arkansas.
So was it Barry Foster?
It was 92? Barry Foster. How many yards? What is the all-time record? Not total yards. All-time rushing yards in a single season was set in 1992 for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
They wore him down too. I mean, he had so many carries, it was ridiculous. Number 29. That was my favorite player growing up, Barry Foster. Was it?
Don't look at the live chat.
But it was Bob, right?
Bob's right.
I wouldn't have gotten that. So it's 1,690 yards.
Yep, 1690.
That's
so
crazy.
he was averaging. That was a 16-game season, and he was averaging over 100 yards per game.
The way his career ended, and if you read Bill Cowher's book, he talks about it's awful. Like when Barry Foster decides to leave, goes to Carolina, doesn't even play for the Panthers, retires. It's just insane. And I actually tracked him. I tried to track him down to try and get him on my Let's Ride podcast. He was a PE teacher down in Texas, I think, or down south somewhere. And he's no longer teaching. And so I couldn't find an email or anything. I was trying to track him down because I'd love to ask him like how everything went down. Just weird, just really crazy. But Barry Foster was my favorite. I wore number 29 in 7th grade because of Barry Foster.
Oh, he was a truck too. And he also actually had a very big blunder as a rookie. And it was against the San Francisco 49ers in 1990, where he let a kickoff. It was different than a punt. He let a kickoff. He didn't do a touchback. He just walked away from it thinking that this was college rules. And and San Francisco just runs down, touchdown. Yeah, he's looking all around. Chuck Noll screaming at him. But in 1992, he was just trucking guys. That was just a beautiful season of a running game.
What was a bigger blunder, that or Plexico Burress standing up and spiking the ball without being touched?
I would that was a dumb blunder, and I was thinking about that when I was saying that because that was a rookie blunder. And that was actually, it's funny, that was actually like 10 years difference, because that was 2000, I believe. But I would say it was this because that led to a touchdown.
Right? Yeah. Those rookie blunders, those are crazy. So
we all have them.
Absolutely, yeah, we all do in our own perspectives. But Brian, let's do some final thoughts like we always do.
All right, so we are coming up on July 4th. It is, this is a special time for me. I mean, now it's not like the holidays were for Christmas, how people celebrate Christmas with their family and everything, but July 4th is one of my favorite times of year because one, training camp is right around the corner, but it's where we celebrate and where I always have a chance to reflect. And when you think that this nation of ours is only 248 years old, and in 2 years, we're going to be celebrating 250, and you don't think that is going to be a marketing party throughout the world. I mean, not throughout the world, throughout the country. It's definitely going to be. But our country has a lot of problems. And this is not a political statement. Our country has a lot of problems. We're still a relatively young country for what that is. But on a day like July 4th, I like to reflect and be thankful, just like I do on Thanksgiving, for the country that I still live in. So with that, I want to wish everybody a happy July 4th and have a great day. And then on the next day, July 5th, I want you all to celebrate another great birthday. And it will be something that happened 74th birthday of Hugh Anthony Craig, a great patriot for our country who sang a lot of national anthems. If you don't know who that is, happy birthday, Huey Lewis.
There you go. Brian, are you a fan of Dazed and Confused, the movie?
Oh, I love that movie. And so not just because of all right.
No, it's so much. There's so much more to that movie.
I saw it in the theater, Jeff.
Okay. So there's the scene where school is out and Alice Cooper's School's Out is just starting. And there's the history teacher as the kids are walking out. You know what she says, right? Hey, this summer when you're celebrating that bicentennial brouhaha, remember what you're celebrating. A bunch of old white men that didn't want to pay their taxes.
All right. That just shoots down my entire...
I always remember that. I don't know why. I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. So
that is a fantastic movie, and Ben Affleck is in it, and you don't even know that's Ben Affleck.
Well, hey, for all the Yellowstone fans, Rip is in that movie.
Oh yeah,
he's red hair, curly hair. He's the one that when they're at the kegger and he's in the back of the truck and he's drinking, he stands up and he realizes he's had so much to drink, he just sits right back down. Oh, that's a star-studded cast.
But that is where all right did come from.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you haven't seen that movie, go see it. Rent it, whatever, stream it. It's awesome. I love that movie. All right. Do you want to try and send us out, Brian? Is this how you're doing this?
Yeah, gosh, I can never do that like Dave does. So you know what? I'm going to let you do it, Jeff.
Hey, we'll see you on another Steelers preview. Take it easy.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.